The basement with two doors. He was 13 when this happened. It was a Friday night at my friend Liam's house. His parents were the kind who stocked the freezer with pizza rolls and the pantry with enough soda to dissolve teeth. The plan was simple: games, a movie, then sleep in the basement. Liam's basement had two doors. One was the stairs. The other was a narrow, old wooden door in the far corner, painted the same color as the wall. Liam said it led to a storage room that the previous owners had sealed for moisture issues. That phrase stuck with me. Moisture issues. We turned off the lights and used a single lamp behind the couch to make it feel like a movie theater. The air down there was cool and smelled like dust and laundry detergent. Around midnight, the house got quiet in the way houses do when parents go to bed. Phones got put away. We tried to watch a comedy, but the laughs felt forced in the dark. At one point during the movie, I heard it, a soft sound from the far corner, like something dragging. I kept my eyes on the screen. I told myself it was the AC kicking on or the ducts settling. A few minutes later, I heard it again, a kind of muffled scrape from behind that second door. Did you hear that? I whispered. No, Liam said. Probably the dehumidifier. But there wasn't a dehumidifier down there. When the movie ended, we made a bed out of blankets on the floor. I faced the couch. Liam faced the room. The lamp stayed on because neither of us wanted to sleep in total darkness. I was almost asleep when the lamp flickered. Not off, just a quick dip in brightness. In that half second, I thought I saw the corner door shift. The paint around it had a hairline crack that looked a little wider than before. My mouth felt dry. I couldn't tell if it was my eyes playing tricks or if the door had actually moved. I told myself not to be dramatic. Then I heard the scrape again, longer this time, followed by a soft tap, tap, tap. 3 of them, close together. Liam sat up. Okay, that I heard. We both stared at the door. The room felt colder, like the air around us dropped 5 degrees. I pulled the blanket up to my chin like that would protect us. Maybe it's raccoons, Liam whispered. In the wall? Tap, tap, tap. I couldn't tell where it was coming from anymore. It felt like it was inside my head. We waited. Our breathing sounded loud. I tried to be brave and said, "Let's open it." Liam shook his head. Dad said never to. We didn't move. The tap stopped. For a while it was dead quiet. Finally we relaxed enough to lie back down. I don't know how long we stayed like that, maybe 20 minutes, when something changed. The air carried this damp, earthy smell like wet cardboard and old leaves. Moisture issues, do you smell that? I asked. Liam didn't answer. He was staring at the corner door, his face pale. I followed his gaze. The hairline crack of the door was no longer hairline. It was a thin black line the width of a pencil, and I could see the edge of the latch. The door had opened maybe half an inch. We both stood up, moving like we were being pulled by strings. There was this low sound behind the wood, like breathing. Not loud, just the kind of sound you can't unhear once you notice it. Wet, slow, and patient. "I'm getting my dad," Liam said, but his voice sounded far away. We didn't want to turn our backs on it. We shuffled sideways up the stairs, eyes locked on the crack. When our feet hit the second step, the breathing stopped. The smell got stronger. Then something slid, just a tiny shift, and the door opened another half inch. I know what I saw next. Even if I have tried to convince myself I imagined it. Through that slit of darkness, a pale shape pressed forward. Not a face, not exactly. More like skin, smooth and swollen, with a faint line in the middle that looked like a seam that had never fully healed. As it leaned, there was a soft, wet sound, like a suction cup releasing. We ran. Liam banged on his parents' door until his dad opened it, sleepy and angry. He grabbed a flashlight and a baseball bat and stomped down the stairs. We followed, not wanting to, but needing to see. When we reached the basement, the lamp was flickering again. The door in the corner was closed. Not cracked, closed like it had been painted shut since forever. Liam's dad tried the handle. It didn't budge. He even pushed his shoulder into it and the door didn't move. He turned and glared at us like we had pulled a prank. He checked the windows, the bulkhead, everything. Nothing was open. There was no sign anybody else was down there. He told us to sleep upstairs, which we did, crowded on the living room floor, the TV on low volume to drown out the silence. I barely slept, and when I did, I woke to the feeling of damp breath on my face. It was just a dream, I told myself. The next morning, I went back downstairs when the sun came up. Light drained through the tiny basement window, enough to see dust floating in the air. The corner door looked normal. But near the base, on the concrete floor, was a faint wet ring, like something puddled there and then either dried or pulled itself away. Years later, when Liam's family moved, the realtor mentioned the sealed storage room again. "We had the door tested," she said cheerfully, like that was reassuring. "Turns out it doesn't open at all. It's not a door. It's a false panel." I didn't say anything, because I still remember the sound of breathing, the wet seam of something pushing forward, and the way the basement air tasted like it came from another place that didn't want to be empty anymore. The wrong window. I grew up in a town where everyone knew everyone, the kind of place where we never locked doors. I know how that sounds now. My best friend Tessa had a big old farmhouse with a wraparound porch and a yard that swallowed the light after sunset. Her parents left that winter weekend to see her grandparents. We were 16, allowed to have a small group over as long as we didn't do anything stupid. At dusk, we built a blanket fort in Tessa's room. String lights, pillows, the whole thing. The heat clicked on and off. We told ghost stories even though we swore we were too old for them. Around midnight, the wind started. It whistled at the windows like a tea kettle that never boils. We were in that silly, overtired mood when everything is funny. Then Tessa's motion light clicked on outside her window, and we both turned. Her window looked over the porch roof. In that harsh white light, snowflakes looked like static. The porch railing cast thin bars across the siding. Nothing moved. "Probably a cat," Tessa said. She went to turn off the light from her phone app. Her dad had set it up with some smart home thing. Before she could tap, a fingertip slid slowly across the outside of the glass. From the left edge to the middle. It was so gentle it didn't even leave a smudge. Just the suggestion of a touch. We froze. Tessa's phone slipped a little in her hand. "Dad," she called out, even though we both knew her parents were hours away. The fingertip paused, then traced down. Another finger joined it from the right side. They were steady. Careful. Like the person had all the time in the world. I grabbed the nearest thing with weight, the lamp on her nightstand, and whispered, "We need to go downstairs now." We backed out of the room. We didn't run because something felt like running would make it worse. We reached the hallway and Tessa whispered to her phone, "Call Mom." The call didn't go through. Bad reception? She tried her dad, nothing. We made it to the top of the stairs, and that's when her phone vibrated with a notification from the smart camera on the porch. Motion detected. She tapped it. The feed opened. For a second it was just snow and railing. Then a shape leaned into frame. A person in a dark hoodie, face tilted up toward Tessa's window. We could only see a thin mouth and a chin. The person was smiling, not at the camera, at the window. "Call 911, I said. She did. We whispered to the operator that someone was on the porch roof touching the window. The operator said to stay where we were, stay quiet, and that officers were on the way. The porch light snapped off by itself. A second later, it snapped back on. The figure didn't flinch. The smile never changed. Then through the phone camera's tinny speaker, we heard the person speak for the first time. Wrong window. Their head turned, a slow, cautious turn, as if they were trying not to startle something. They looked past Tessa's room to the guest room at the end of the hall, the one with the crib. Tessa's baby cousin had slept there the weekend before. No one was in it now, but we didn't know if the person knew that. "Don't move," the operator said again. "Officers are 2 minutes out." The figure put both hands on the window frame, Tessa's window, and pulled. The hands kept their shape too perfectly, like they were wearing thin rubber gloves. They slid to the corner, then stopped, like listening. The smile faded. The head tilted as if sniffing. Then, without warning, the person crawled sideways along the porch roof, cat quiet, and pressed against the guest room glass. We couldn't see them anymore from the hall, but the camera caught the movement. The operator kept talking in our ears like a metronome to keep us from doing anything stupid. We heard a soft squeal. Not the window. Something else. Like the sound of a tiny wheel turning. Tessa's face went white. "The baby monitor," she mouthed. Her parents kept the receiver on in the kitchen, still plugged in from last weekend. The guest room monitor was on too, even though no one was in there. The camera stream showed nothing happening. But the house started to feel like it was pulsing. I know that makes no sense, but that's how it felt. Like the walls had a heartbeat. A pair of headlights flashed across the downstairs ceiling. A car pulled into the driveway. The figure moved fast, skittering out of frame like a spider. A minute later, 2 officers were on the front porch, spotlights sweeping the roof, the yard, the windows. They found footprints in the snow on the porch roof, leading to the corner where a trellis ran down to the yard like a ladder. They searched the property while one officer stayed with us upstairs. We showed him the camera feed and where the person had stood. He watched quietly, his jaw tight. When the other officer came back, he said there were more tracks. Not just up the trellis and down. Tracks along the side of the house to the back door. Tracks around the crib room window. Tracks to the kitchen door where the baby monitor sat plugged in. Its tiny wheel for volume turned all the way up. They never found the person, but 2 days later, Tessa's mom called my house. She sounded calm the way people sound when they're trying not to scare you, which scared me more. They checked the porch roof, she said. The screen on Tessa's window. It was cut weeks ago. Clean edges, like it was waiting. Tessa's parents moved after that winter. The new owners put flower boxes under the windows. In the spring, the porch looked sweet and harmless. I drove by once. There were kids' toys in the yard. A tricycle tipped over. I kept going. I didn't like the idea that somebody could pass a house and mistake a window, and that the only reason we were safe was because that person finally realized they had the wrong one. The girl with the buckle shoes. I was in 7th grade when Danny invited 5 of us over. His parents were night shift nurses who worked opposite schedules, so the house was always watched by at least one adult, except for this one weird overlap when both had to cover a shift. We were old enough, they decided, to watch ourselves for a few hours. Danny's house had a formal living room nobody used, with plastic runners on the carpet and porcelain dolls behind glass. It was the kind of room that felt colder than the rest of the house, like the air didn't like being breathed there. We set up camp in the den and dared each other to walk through the formal room with the lights off. The first few times it was funny. The 5th time I walked alone. I wanted to be brave. I turned off the switch and stepped onto the plastic runner. The plastic crackled under my socks. The darkness felt different in there. Thick. I kept my arms out, fingertips brushing the sofa. Halfway through the room, the grandfather clock in the corner ticked once. Just once, not part of a steady rhythm. Just a single, wet-sounding tick that somehow echoed. I stopped. The glass cabinet with the dolls must have been near me. I could smell that old doll smell, starch, cedar, something powdery. Then very carefully something brushed the back of my ankle. A small tap, and then a second one like a kid's shoe bumping into me from behind. I jumped and hit the light switch with my elbow. The room sprang into a sugary glow. Nothing was behind me. No one was even in the doorway. The dolls stared past my shoulder with their glossy eyes. And on the plastic runner right behind my foot were 2 damp footprints the size of a little girl's. They faced the cabinet, as if someone had been standing there looking in and I had backed into them. I yelled for Danny. The others crowded in, laughing at first, then going quiet when they saw the footprints. They weren't mud. They weren't water. The plastic looked faintly darker, like the color had been pulled out of it where the feet stood. We argued about it until nerves turned into jokes again. By 10, we had pizza, bad movies, and plans to sleep in the living room where the light could stay on. Around midnight, Danny fell asleep first, then 2 others. I lay there listening to the house breathe. The grandfather clock ticked once, then again. Then it fell into a steady rhythm, as if it had found its heartbeat after being dead for years. I watched the ceiling and tried not to look at the doorway to the formal room. There was a feeling of someone standing just out of sight. The plastic runner rustled, but nobody moved. The TV screen went from a movie menu to a black screen with a faint reflection of the room. In that reflection, the doorway looked darker than dark. There was nothing to reflect, and yet it seemed to eat the light. I don't know how long I lay like that before the den got colder. I could see my breath fog just slightly. The smell of starch and cedar drifted in, and then I heard a tiny buckle clink, the delicate sound a shoe makes when the strap slides into place. I sat up without meaning to. Something in me felt tugged. I stood and walked toward the formal room. My feet felt too light, like I wasn't touching the floor. I stepped onto the plastic and it crackled under my weight. The grandfather clock ticked steadily, but I couldn't find its face. It was as if the pendulum swung somewhere else and the sound bled through. In front of the glass cabinet, a small handprint bloomed on the inside of the glass. It appeared slowly, as if pressed by something cold. Then another handprint. They were small. The size of a first grader's, I whispered. Hello? As if that was the smart thing to do. From the dark reflection in the cabinet, a shape grew. A dim oval closer to the ground than any of our faces would be. The oval turned left, then right. And then two things happened at once. The grandfather clock stopped and a fingernail scraped the inside of the glass. Just a soft scratch, but pointed. The handprint slid down like whatever was inside was losing strength. I felt a pull at my ankle again. Not painful. More like a child trying to get me to kneel. I went down on one knee without thinking. My mouth tasted like dust. I didn't see anything next to me until I looked straight at the glass and saw myself, kneeling, and next to my knee a girl in a dark dress with buckle shoes. Her skin was waxy. Her hair was too smooth, like it had been combed and set years ago. She didn't blink. She wasn't in the room. She was only in the reflection, and she was staring at me like she was surprised I could see her. She opened her mouth. No sound came out, but I heard the word anyway. Cold. My own breath fogged the cabinet door. The fog spread in a circle and faded, like something inside was breathing too. I stood up, heart inside my throat, and backed away. The handprints on the glass lifted one by one like someone letting go. The buckle clinked a second time, softer. I turned and ran back to the living room where the others slept. I crawled into my blanket and watched the hallway as the air warmed by a degree I can't explain. In the morning, I told myself it was a dream until I went to get my sweatshirt from the chair by the doorway. On the sleeve near the cuff was a faint streak of white dust, gritty like plaster. Embedded in the dust was a single hair, too long and too smooth to belong to any of us. It broke when I touched it like it had been dead a long time. Danny moved a few years later. His mom sold the dolls. The formal room became a normal room. But I still think about the girl with the buckle shoes and how she only existed in the reflection, as if the cabinet was the real room and we were the glass. 3 a.m. hide and seek. This was at my cousin Nora's birthday sleepover when we were kids. There were 4 of us. Me, Nora, her neighbor Jay, and a girl named Bree. The house had a finished attic with low slanted ceilings where we planned to sleep. At midnight, we decided to play hide and seek in the dark because we were geniuses. We set the rules. Lights off. 1 seeker, 3 hiders, no going outside. No climbing into the crawl spaces because those creeped everyone out. We talked big and then immediately broke our own rules. I was the first seeker. I counted to 60 in the attic, facing the wall, palms over my eyes. My mouth felt dry from all the sugar we'd eaten. When I hit 60, I said, "Ready or not?" But my voice died against the slanted ceiling. I found Bree first behind the hallway curtain. She laughed when I pulled it back and shoved me. We whispered so we wouldn't get caught by Nora's mom. We split up to find the others. The house creaked in those slow, swampy ways old houses do, where every step sounds like you're waking something that sleeps in the boards. I searched the bathroom, the linen closet under the dining room table. Nothing. When I passed the basement door, a breath of air brushed my ankles like the house exhaled. The basement was off limits. We had promised. The smell drifting up was cold metal and damp stone. Then I heard Jay giggle. It came from the living room. The sound was soft and cut off fast, like he'd just slapped his hand over his mouth. I went in. Nothing. The couch pillows were perfectly arranged. The TV's black screen showed a faint version of me. I said his name and my voice came back to me from somewhere else, a half-second later, a half-inch lower. I checked the coat closet by the front door. Coats, boots, an umbrella. And at the very back, behind a winter jacket, I saw movement. I smiled, ready to brag. I pushed the coat aside and said, "Gotcha." Something looked up at me. But it wasn't Jay, it was me. My reflection, squashed and stretched by the shiny black curve of the umbrella's handle. For a second it fooled my brain into thinking someone was crouched in there. I laughed at myself a little too loud. That's when Nora screamed. It wasn't a playful scream. It was sharp and panicked and cut off fast. It came from upstairs. I bolted. Bree met me halfway up the stairs, eyes wide. "I can't find Jay," she said. Nora screamed. We reached the attic and found Nora standing in the middle of the room, hugging herself, breathing fast. "Where were you?" she whispered. "Looking for you," I said. "What happened?" "I heard someone under the bed," she said. They laughed. I thought it was Jay. I looked under and it was me. She didn't mean a mirror. She meant she'd seen herself under the bed. Same shirt, same hair. But it looked wrong. Like someone was trying to wear her shape and didn't know how to hold it right. It smiled with too many teeth showing. Then it reached for her ankle with a hand that didn't have a palm crease. That's when she screamed and ran. We all stood there listening to the attic. It felt crowded, as if the air had more weight than it should. The slanted ceiling pressed down, and the rafters hummed like bees. "Jay," Bree called. "Game's over." A floorboard in the hall answered, not with a step, with a tap, 2 beats, then 1. Like a code. Bree looked at me. "He's messing with us." We followed the taps down the hall to the crawlspace door. It was one of those short doors you have to crouch to open with a small metal latch. Off limits. We'd all agreed. The latch hung down. Unlatched. "Don't," Nora whispered. "Jay," I said. "If you're in there, come out." Something scraped inside. The door inched open. Cold air rolled out, carrying dust and the smell of old insulation. My skin prickled. Bree reached out and pulled the door the rest of the way. Our phone flashlights made weak cones in the dark. At first, we saw nothing but insulation and beams. Then eyes. Not animal eyes. Human eyes. Wide, fake wide, like someone didn't understand blinking. They were too still, too shiny in the light. The eyes were at our level, not tucked back in the crawl. Something crawled forward on elbows, slow and careful. It moved like it didn't quite know how to use its arms. Its face was so close to ours we should have recognized it. But our brains took a second, like they had to load the image, because the face wasn't one face. It was all of ours. A blur of features that flickered between me, Nora, and Bree. It settled on Jay's face for the longest time, even though Jay wasn't there yet. We slammed the door. The latch clicked. The taps started again, faster, the code breaking into frantic knocking. We backed away and didn't stop until we were in the kitchen, all of us talking at once. That's when the front door opened and Jay walked in with Nora's mom. They both looked annoyed. Nora's mom had picked Jay up from his house because his stomach got upset and his parents hadn't wanted him to walk alone. "We weren't gone long," she said. "Why do you all look like you saw a ghost?" No one laughed. We didn't tell her. We didn't know how to say it without sounding crazy. She made tea and told us to settle down. At 3 a.m., the house went still, the kind of still that makes your ears ring. I tried to sleep in the attic with everyone, but I kept opening my eyes to check the crawlspace door. At some point, I dozed and I dreamed I was counting for hide and seek again. When I reached 60, I opened my eyes and saw the crawlspace door in the dark. The latch rested flat, horizontal. Then very slowly, it tipped down. I didn't move. The door opened an inch. 2. The air from inside was cooler than the attic and smelled like wet wood. I didn't see anything, but I heard the taps again. 1, 2. 1. Then close to my ear, not from the crawl space but from the space right next to my head, someone whispered in my exact voice. "Ready or not." I pretended to be asleep until the sun came up. When I finally sat up, my throat was raw for no reason. My friends were pale and puffy-eyed like none of us had slept. The latch was up again, neat as a pinned wing. Later that day, Nora's mom found tiny handprints on the inside of the crawlspace door. Not finger marks from dirty hands, clean, dry prints in the dust where the wood was wiped free. 4-fingered, no thumb. She blamed mice. We didn't argue. I don't play hide and seek. And if someone invites me to a sleepover, I ask one question. Does the house have a crawl space? If the answer is yes, I suddenly have plans.